Today, we are diving into Hisham Matar's incredible Pulitzer Prize-winning memoir, The Return. It's this profoundly moving, personal story of a son's 30-year search for his father, who was disappeared by the Qaddafi regime in Libya. Right from the start, this is the question that just echoes through every single page of Matar's book. It really gets to the heart of exile, this idea of living your life in a state of suspension, caught between a past you can never go back to and a present that just never quite feels like home. So let's set the scene. It's March 2012. Qaddafi's regime has fallen, and after 33 long years in exile, Hisham Matar is finally going home to Libya. But believe me, this is anything but a simple homecoming. I mean, can you imagine this moment? He is right on the edge of the one journey he's waited decades to take. But he describes this feeling of being completely frozen, just paralyzed by the sheer weight of it all. He's about to return to a country he barely recognizes, a country that took absolutely everything from his family. And in that moment of tension, his mother turns to him and asks this. Now, on the one hand, it's a sweet little joke, right? She's teasing him about the heroic exiles in his novels. But underneath that, it's a warning. She knows he isn't just going back to Libya. He's diving headfirst back into that obsessive, painful search for his father. And she's terrified of what that's going to do to him. So to really understand the gravity of this return, we have to talk about the man at the center of this entire search, his father, Jaballa Matar. Jaballa Matar was a pretty prominent businessman and a really important figure in the opposition against Qaddafi. And because of that, his family was forced into this life on the run. They had to build new lives in all these different cities. But that idea of Libya, of home, was always there. This constant, painful longing for a place they couldn't go back to. And don't think for a second that exile meant they were safe. No way. The regime had long, terrifying arms. Matar talks about his dad checking under the car for bombs every morning, and his brother Ziad barely escaping a kidnapping plot at his boarding school in Switzerland. I mean, this was their childhood, just defined by this constant, gnawing fear. This timeline really puts it all into sharp focus. In 1990, that constant threat became a horrifying reality. Jaballa Matar was abducted from their home in Cairo by Egyptian secret police, who then handed him over to the Libyans. He just vanished into the regime's prison system, and the last anyone heard a trace of him was in 1996. So, his father's disappearance kicks off this decades-long, absolutely relentless campaign by Hisham and his family to find any answers they can. This led to a completely surreal high-stakes meeting in 2010. After an open letter signed by hundreds of writers and intellectuals put a ton of international pressure on the regime, a meeting was set up. Think about it. The son of the victim sitting face-to-face with the son of the perpetrator. Matar was totally direct. He had 3 simple, clear demands. But Seif al-Islam's response? Oh, it was a masterclass in evasion. He made vague promises, he deflected questions. He even tried to tempt them with business deals in what he called the new Libya. It was just this cynical, cold display of power. But then, after the meeting, as they were leaving, one of Seif's men pulled Hisham and his brother aside and said this. Now, this wasn't an official confirmation, not at all, but it was the closest they had ever come to hearing the truth. The chilling message was unmistakable. Your father is gone. Okay, so fast forward, Qaddafi has fallen, and now Matar can finally go to the very place that held his father captive. A place that, for him, is a land of ghosts. His trip home becomes a kind of investigation. He's meeting with relatives and former political prisoners, and each one of them is like a walking archive, holding a piece of a story the regime tried so desperately to erase. He's slowly, painfully putting together this mosaic of his father's last days. And at the very core of this search is one horrific event and one number, 1,270. That's the estimated number of political prisoners who were massacred by the regime on a single day, June 29, 1996, at the infamous Abu Salim prison. This line comes from one of his father's letters, smuggled out of the prison. I mean, it just paints this stark, brutal picture of the conditions. Life was stripped down to nothing, an empty world inside a concrete box. One of the most heartbreaking stories comes from his uncle, who was in the same prison wing, so close yet so completely cut off. He told Hisham about hearing this lone voice reciting poetry every single night, a voice just filled with sorrow. It was only later that he realized, with this dawning horror, that it was almost certainly his own brother, Jaballa, in a cell nearby. So all of this brings us to the end of the physical journey, but not to a neat conclusion. That central, painful ambiguity is still there. Because after everything, all the campaigning, the meetings, the return home, the interviews, this one question still just hangs in the air. The question that has shaped his son's entire life. And this is the devastating truth of it all. There's no body. There is no grave. There is no official record. The most likely answer is that he was killed in that massacre, but that final, absolute certainty, it remains just out of reach. It's a ghost that can never truly be put to rest. Matar uses this beautiful, heartbreaking image to describe his family. He says they're not a vertical family, with generations building on top of each other. They're horizontal, scattered, spread thin, like spilt milk, by violence and exile. And this is what he ultimately realizes. The journey was never really about finding closure, a word he doesn't really believe in. It was about reclaiming a connection to the landscapes of his childhood, to the faces of his family, and to the parts of himself that he had to leave behind in Libya all those years ago. He ends the memoir not with an answer, but with this incredibly powerful, hopeful question. After a life that was defined by what wasn't possible, by loss, could home be the one place that finally makes the entire world feel possible again? It's just a profound thought to end on after this incredible journey of love, grief, and the search for truth.